Ukraine is in a weird position right now. The war-minded individuals in the West are all focused on the damage done to Russian refineries and Wildberries logistics centers. And sure, residents of Kyiv are excited about what might happen next with those, but they have a more proximate concern on their minds: Russia's ballistic missiles. They are raining down at an alarming rate, multiple times per week, with larger waves and increasing casualty counts. Thus, Ukraine's next priority is to figure out a solution to this menacing problem, and the best defense in this case might be a good offense. So today, let's start off by understanding Ukraine's current defensive position more broadly. Then we will explore 3 potential solutions: defensive weapons to shoot down the ballistic missiles as they approach, drones to hunt the launchers, and Ukraine's own missile campaign to destroy Russia's missiles. But we should begin with the broader defensive picture. Not too long ago, things looked solid for Ukraine. Circa spring 2025, Russia accelerated the output of Shahed drones, which took its toll on Ukrainian cities. The only bright spot for Ukraine here was that the original Shaheds were slow and dumb. Ukraine responded by ramping up its own production of even cheaper interceptors, similar to this one that I saw at a NATO innovation event near Istanbul last year. Produce 1,000 of these per day and build a network to detect incoming raids, and you are good to go. Ukraine would routinely intercept more than 90% of those Shaheds, raising questions of whether Shaheds were cost-effective for Russia anymore. Now, the book is far from closed on the Ayatollah's gift to Putin. Russia has started producing jet-powered variants, which fly at speeds much faster than propeller-powered interceptors. The interceptors now only get a single head-on opportunity to intercept. There is no playing catch-up. In turn, interception rates have ticked down by a couple of percentage points, but Ukraine still feels like it is in relative control over this situation. On the other hand, Ukraine's interception rates of ballistic missiles is steeply declining. The Kremlin seems to understand the weakness that it has found because ballistic missile production is increasing in the country. Those drone interceptors that I saw in Istanbul are just not cut out for that task. You know, it has been a busy couple of years for me. It has not just been Istanbul. It's also been London, and Oslo, and Brussels, and The Hague, and Tallinn, and Reykjavik. And there has been one constant frustration throughout those trips: a cell phone that no longer works properly. But thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Saily, I no longer have that problem. Saily is an eSIM service app. Just download the Saily app, choose your plan, and follow the simple in-app steps. You're good to go. Once you arrive at your destination, it activates automatically and connects you to a local network. No new hardware necessary. With over 200 destinations covered, wherever you are going, they will almost certainly have you covered. May I recommend one of their tropical options rather than Norway or Iceland in the middle of winter? Plus, they have flexible plans that will cover every traveler's needs, from a few gigabytes to unlimited data. And by going to Saily, that's SAILY.com/William Spaniel, and using the coupon code William Spaniel, all one word, you can get 15% off an eSIM plan. So thanks again to Saily for sponsoring today's video. Well, we still have to address Ukraine's options to handle the ballistic missile threat. And at the top of the list is missile defense. Yep, we are at that part of the day where we have to talk about the alliance-wide dearth of Patriots. It might not be literally accurate to say that Ukraine has run out of Patriot interceptors, but it de facto might as well have. The August 5th barrage saw a literal 0 interception rate on 28 incoming Russian missiles. The elephant in the room is that the United States is diverting its own Patriot allotment to handle the Iran war. Unsurprisingly, it is easy to find criticism from Ukrainians about this choice. However, I do not find that line of conversation to be constructive. When the United States pays to stockpile Patriots, the United States gets to decide how to allocate them, for better or for worse. And right now, that means shooting down Iranian threats to Gulf partners. Complaints that the United States should be using them in Europe completely misses the complaints of the Trump administration, and many administrations before him. It is an appeal that the United States should be paying to defend Europe rather than Europe taking primary or even equal responsibility for the continent's security. Indeed, turning back the clock, the European problem was a general lack of investment here for decades. Prior to the war, only Poland, Romania, and Sweden were serious about stockpiling Patriots, and only then their quantities could cover medium-length engagements. In contrast, a country like Germany was only preparing for a conflict that might last a few days. I can only describe this planning as a strategic blunder. Even if you understand that most conflicts are short in practice, if you only prepare to fight for a short amount of time, your opponent can see right through you, extend the conflict to a medium amount of time, and then leave you defenseless. The good news here is that there has been an attitude shift among European leaders, where defense spending is en vogue for the large majority of NATO members. The demand for Patriots is seemingly endless now. For some perspective, in 2024, Lockheed Martin had produced its 2000th PAC-3 interceptor, roughly 8 years after the line started. With that unlimited demand, Lockheed Martin is tracking to produce 750 in 2027 and expand to 2,000 in 2030. This level of production has always been feasible. Had Europe invested appropriately a decade ago, Lockheed Martin would have had the production capacity to produce at least 2,000 per year throughout the war, and we would not be having this conversation today. However, this is not a constructive conversation either. It is a discussion of sins past. We cannot jump into a time machine to ramp up production 10 years ago, and there will be a long time gap before we can start conceiving of Patriots as being a sustainable solution to the problem. So perhaps we should shift to what Ukraine can do while more Patriots are built, as the United States and Ukraine sort out whatever is going on with their licensing agreement. Yeah, that is probably an entirely different video. Worth noting that Firepoint is trying to develop a Patriot alternative, slated for initial testing in January 2027. We will see how that goes. Anyway, if you cannot play defense effectively, your only alternative is to go on the offense. And Ukraine has done just that, using drones to try to hunt for Russian missile launchers. The main challenge here is that a platform like Iskander is built on a truck. It therefore employs the same shoot-and-scoot strategy that you might be familiar with from HIMARS. The missile that you launch will light up enemy radars. So as soon as you launch, you drive away. Any counterfire from your opponent will be hitting an empty field by the time the bomb lands. Loitering drones appear to be the answer to that problem. If you have intelligence that one of those Iskanders is in the general vicinity, send up your drones and take a look. Then, once you have found your target, go in for the kill. Ukraine has followed this playbook multiple times. Here is video from March 13th in central Crimea, with drones locating and destroying some Iskanders trying to blend in with the landscape. And here is another set of strikes on March 24th against a different type of ballistic missile system. 3 of them out for a leisurely evening drive. But Ukrainian drones track them down, and you can fill in the blanks about what happened after these images cut off. The trick here is that Ukraine needs some level of air dominance for the trailing and striking to work. Although it is true that Russian air defenses are weak and feel non-existent, the refinery and Wild Berries strikes are misleading. Russia's air defenses are depleted, and Ukraine is winning those battles based on mass. Where this becomes a significant problem for Ukraine is if Russia starts moving its mobile launchers further back. Iskander is supposed to have a range of 500 kilometers, the maximum allowed under the now-defunct Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Russia commonly launches them from the border oblasts of Bryansk and Kursk, giving them more than enough range to hit Kyiv. However, the United States was always concerned that Russia was secretly building longer-range models. Ukraine claims that one of those is already in service, and you can always extend range by decreasing payload capacity. So if Russia needs to, it can launch from safety from further back. There may be a smaller boom, but that will be of little comfort to Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine can continue trying to use drones to hunt down mobile ballistic launchers deeper into Russian territory. And Russian air defenses are poor enough that Ukraine may still feel confident about its chances despite having to go through more layers of those defenses. Where the bigger problem arises is in communication. This is an active hunt. You cannot just pre-program a location and hope for the best, because it only takes a minute of driving to invalidate the original coordinates. This is why Ukraine has pushed Starlink to greenlight Ukrainian drones to have satellite internet access while on these hunts. Thus far, Elon Musk has been reluctant to approve attacks on Russian territory. It seems plausible that Ukraine has a winning argument here, so long as Kyiv limits the strikes to proactively destroying Russia's offensive missiles. Absent that, Starlink creates a perverse incentive that protects Russia, reminiscent of how Biden's restriction on any US weapons use in Russia encouraged Russian troops to form up for attacks just on the other side of the border. One final note here is that there has been increased calls for Ukraine to use F-16s to hunt for the launchers. The upshot here is literally up. By firing from altitude, Ukrainian weapons can use gravity and an airfoil to penetrate deeper into Russia. Nonetheless, this does not solve the shoot-and-scoot problem. Meanwhile, taking F-16s directly into Russian territory to make them smart hunters is not a good idea. Again, Russian air defenses are bad, but they are not that bad. Risking a drone is not a problem. Risking a pilot and a very expensive aircraft is. The remaining option is to forget about the launchers and attack missile production. With the help of some MILF tech, this is surprisingly feasible. Although Russia placed the main production facility pretty far east, Ukraine can now reach that far, and indeed attacked it back in February. Firepoint, the producer of the Flamingo cruise missile, was all too happy to highlight its capacity, releasing this video of the launch and then deliberately leaving it up to the viewer to make the connection that these had hit the Iskander plant. The main problem with this strategy is that ballistic missile production facilities are relatively hardened targets. They are not bunkers, but they are also not vehicles just sitting in a field. They are inside of buildings, and you need to damage the structure of the building to reach the intended target. Flamingo can do that, but it is not easy, and it gets harder because unlike a refinery or wild berries distribution hub, they are not nearly as flammable. The question left for Ukraine is whether aiming for the protected site is better than the alternative. Wartime planning sometimes means ignoring a proximate problem to achieve a longer-term goal, which will ultimately lead to less pain for you overall. Applying that here, sure, you might be able to destroy Iskander production. But then what? The war continues. Maybe the people of Kyiv will not go to bed afraid every night, but Ukrainians out east will still be taking casualties all the same. What if instead you use the Flamingos in production to hit some politically sensitive target, and then do that again, and again, and again? Does that yield enough political pressure on the Kremlin to consider negotiating a settlement? Because if the answer is yes, maybe that is better than trying to destroy Iskanders. Or maybe there are other military targets to destroy that are easier to hit than Iskander production. Although this will provide little comfort to those living in Kyiv, repeated ballistic missile attacks on the city do not endanger the military situation on the front line. If Ukrainians are resolved to fight, absorbing those urban losses may again be better than the alternative. War is a constant trade-off. Just because a problem exists does not mean that you should pursue a solution to it. There are dozens of other problems out there, and you need to triage the situation. So, what are our takeaway lines for today? Ukraine's long-range bombing defenses are a mixed bag right now, with Russian drones under control, but missiles wreaking increasing havoc. A purely defensive solution to the problem is not an option at the moment due to a lack of European purchases and the United States' own forays into Iran. Drones are providing a partial solution by hunting the launchers, though they may need to penetrate further into Russia to do the job properly. Finally, Ukraine has also tried striking the missile production itself, but the distances involved and better shielded target have prevented Ukraine from scoring a major success there. Thanks again to Saley for sponsoring today's video. Go to saley.com/WilliamSpaniel and use the coupon code WilliamSpaniel to get 15% off an eSIM data plan. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.